learn martial arts.
Big surprise. Huge surprise.
I'm starting to get in a bad mood, you know? Maybe it's like a mood swing, my hormones, I don't know. You know, maybe it's my need to impose my will.
Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show, Kickin' It. I'm your host, Rob, and tonight I want to start off before getting into tonight's discussion of Brawl and Cell Block 99 starring Vince Vaughn. Some of you may have known from some of the tweets earlier today that originally the real Dr. V was going to be with us tonight, but unfortunately he decided to pick on this guy named Bradley, and yeah, it was not a good sight. So, oh, wait a minute. Doctor, you are there.
Shh! You can't find me. Quit talking so loud.
I'll ask you later how you survived, but in the meantime, yeah, join us. Brawl and Cell Block 99, Vince Vaughn. Wow. Before I ask you your initial thoughts, I just want to start by saying mine, because for me, this was interesting. This is a smaller film, and this film is a lot like the other movie or two that this director did. So this movie was by the Bone Tomahawk director, which is like this Western horror type film that had Kurt Russell in it. I came across Bone Tomahawk with Kurt Russell because I'm a Kurt Russell fan, and so I watched it and really, really liked it. And then I found out that the guy who wrote it and directed, kind of all on his own, was I think his last name is pronounced Zahler. He ended up doing this one, another one called Dragged Across Concrete, which I have not seen. But when I saw Vince Vaughn was supposed to be in this movie and it was on Prime and I'd watched, I went, wow, what an interesting film. It's different than today's films. It's a little bit longer. It's over 2 hours long. It's extremely graphic in its violence, which I don't think there's a lot of violence, but what violence is there seems very realistic. It's very intense. And there's a lot of stuff, I think, about this movie you could argue about what is it trying to say in this and that. And I think sometimes these movies are often best just simply left to be a more simple narrative. I don't think there's much to this. But I'm really curious, Doctor, to think what your initial thoughts about this film, because I think we're going to go back and forth a little bit on the way some of these things are. So what did you think of Brawl and Cell Block 99?
I thought it very similar. This character showed a lot of loyalty, man. This is a guy who fights for what he loves. And I was getting Wilson Fisk Daredevil vibes.
Really?
This is like, this guy, he's calm, cool, collect, smart. He's not to be fucked with. You're going to fuck with his wife, he does what he has to take in order to save his wife. He's loyal to her. Literally, And when he loses, he gets angry. He loses it. Like, man, this is like crazy. It's like I said, the violence was. It wasn't. It was violent in certain scenes. It wasn't a lot of it, but still, it's just like, man, it's just like. Whew. I was amazed by it, and they show it. He's curb stomping people, man. He's showing their skulls. He's showing their one guy's faces got pushed in. You hear the bones crunching. This is what I felt like I was watching almost like a Punisher movie, almost a little bit. This is Wilson Fisk in lockup, and he's just beating the crap out of guards. Making fools of them.
Well, I felt like it was a bit more believable rather than superhero-ish. I mean, it's just a big brute guy, and a lot of your character you get from the way people talk about him rather than from him.
No, because I'm just saying, the level of intensity that Vince Vaughn when he acts like this and all this, I thought it was believable too, because honestly we know what happens at the end, but I mean, could this happen? Possibly. I'm sure there are guards who look the other way who get paid off. I'm sure there are corrupt wardens
Yeah,
Yeah,
are you
yes. I mean,
kidding me?
I can see a lot of this happening. Like I said, this is Wilson Fisk's portrayal in this. Right, remind me of Vincent Frio from that guy who played Daredevil,
Well,
Wilson Fisk. It's a cool, calm, collected. Yes, and as far as the whole movie, like yes, he's loyal to his wife. You know, at the beginning, we start off where he's working, loses his job. Obviously, we don't really know why he loses his job, but we can speculate because you see in the back of Vince Vaughn's head, you see this iron cross, and I'm thinking about boxing history in his, with his little, with his history. So maybe they let him go because they were intimidated. Maybe they got complaints. Who knows? So like it just sets up the whole movie for him. They know or to take care of his wife, who obviously we find out that she was cheating on him,
hmm
and he just, even though she wasn't loyal to him, he takes it on the car. He will refuses to step, give her excuse to hit her, make her feel like a victim. No, he said, you know what? Fuck your car.
well, let's talk about that
And
scene for a minute because there's a lot going on
oh
here that
man,
pretty much I think sets up the entire movie. Jennifer Carpenter plays his wife, and the thing with her is she's somewhere like, I mean, she was annoying to me on Dexter, and anybody that watched that show knows who I'm talking about. It's Dexter's sister on there
mm-hmm.
too, and I think she did a pretty good job in this role because you can tell just from the way he goes and collects his things and nothing happens. You're like, okay, when's he going to explode? Well, what's going to happen? And you could just tell with Vince Vaughn the way he's talking. And most of the time his accent's pretty good, so it's believable. Only a few times I think it slips. But one thing that I noticed is that he he only asks questions of people he respects, in that other everywhere else is just he just says something like automatic, not like he's a badass, but he's like, at work when he got fired, he's like, well, I'm gonna go get my things, and he starts walking. Everybody's looking at him, and you can almost feel like they're gonna say something like, "You can't do that," because in all companies they don't let you really do that, but they decided that's the best course of action. We don't want to cross them, and then to your point, he sees her on there, and he says, "Give me your phone." And then he just slaps the top of the car hood, and then he's like, "Get in the house." And then, like you said, he loses it or whatever. But what I like about this too is, there's a lot of talk about this movie, or what talk I saw about it when it came out was that, oh, he's one of these dysfunctional white guy type characters. I'm like, no, I don't think that's the case at all, because he sits down, they have a conversation, and even though she's disloyal by cheating on him, and I certainly don't condone it, there's a question of understanding what's going on, because they have the conversation there in the house, and what's interesting too is she's sitting there, they're talking, and this is probably the best conversation they've had in a long time, and you actually get some background here where he's like, how long? And you know what? No matter what he says, she answers. She doesn't give any bullshit. She doesn't try messing around with him. She doesn't say, oh, you da. She says, well, you weren't around. I was lonely and da 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 da. And, you get some information about what's going on. He's actually been working, not fooling around. His hands are bleeding and everything while he's sitting on there the whole time fidgeting. So you don't know if he's going to pummel the crap out of her or not. So it makes it a very intense watch. Otherwise, it's a very boring conversation. But basically, I,
The
I think,
actual
I'm sorry, who's talking?
Hi,
Oh,
it's Englanty.
oh,
Hey,
okay. Hey,
what's
well, I'll
up?
pass it to you in a minute. So in here, he's
Okay.
actually basically, I think, as a guy, realizing, you know what? I haven't been doing my husbandly duties, being around, being a provider. He's upset because they don't have money. They're in a crappy neighborhood. There's drugs all around. So at this point, he makes the decision right then and there with her. Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to try to have another baby. I'm going to go this and that. She doesn't like the fact that he's going to go run drugs, but he doesn't ask her. He tells her, no, we're going to do it, and this is how it's going to be, and I'm tired of it. So he makes that decision. He's not wishy-washy. And then, boom, from that point on, you get a few minutes worth of, they're in a nice home and everything else there too. And you go, oh, she's not just a cheating little whore. You can kind of understand it too. It's a little bit different. You sense that they have a long relationship there, and they mention him there in passing about being off the bottle. And later on, he references being off it for about 14 years or so. So, yeah, you get the feeling that they've been through a lot of crap together, and things are just really, really, really tough. But he just sees this is the only way to do it, and he's committed. And once he makes that, things at least initially start going well. So Emily Team from I Love Comics, Old Man Comics, and the Homegrown Tourist has decided to join us this evening. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I am Doing awesome. As a matter of fact, I was visiting this movie just now, and I was like, you know what, I want to jump in. This is one of my, and I'm kind of disappointed now that I'm watching it again that it wasn't on the list of best movies of the decade,
Uh-huh.
because this is an incredible film. You could say it's slow because as I'm seeing by the timer, I'm actually looking at the screen right now. We're an hour and 10 minutes into a 2 hour and 12-minute movie, and they're just getting to the point. But I think it's so necessary
Yes,
to,
it's deliberate.
because and here's the thing: the conversation you're talking about. There's a scene in a movie called Rear Window, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It's one of the most brilliant scenes you're ever going to find. It goes from window to window to window. You're getting a picture of everybody's life, so you understand where everybody is in, even though there's not one word of dialogue spoken. Then it pulls in. You see Jimmy Stewart, and you go. He's sleeping, or well, first it goes around the room, and you see that he's an adventurer. You see he's a photographer. You see a crash, and that crash moves on into Jimmy Stewart, and you see he's got a broken leg, and you understand that's where he got the crash. So all of this is done without one word of dialogue, and you're given all this information. Everything you need to know about the two people we're about to follow is done in this conversation where they're talking about her having an affair, and you get to know him, you get to know her with minimum dialogue. He really does just give one word answers, one word explanations, or very close to one word. This is a brilliant script in the fact that there's no fat on this, and it's one of the better characters I've seen on screen in forever and a day, just because of that. There's a scene coming up. I don't know if you want to go from moment to moment, but there's a scene with him coming up where he understands what he did. He's going to have to go to prison, and she says, "I love you." He winks, and she smiles because
Yes.
she understands that this is the kind of thing that this guy does. It's a brilliantly set up movie.
Let's talk
That's
about
why I
this
wanted to jump
second
in.
and third act because to me it's pretty much a huge act one, even though you've met for the most part all the characters until he gets to the
Mhm.
last jail there. But Doctor, let me throw it over to you first here, and we're going to talk about violence here for this part because it's what the movie's about. And I think the Brawl in Cell Block 99 is basically the whole explanation of yeah, you did a bad thing. There's this drug deal that goes bad. He gets arrested. He doesn't turn on anybody. He honestly believes somehow in this loyalty among thieves and bad people in the way that he trusts his instincts and that if he just does his time and tells his wife, "Hey, I'll be out. I love you. I'll see you. I don't want my daughter in here." To the point you're mentioning there, E. But Doctor, what I think is
Mhm.
incredible about the violence that you see here in a couple examples as he gets into prison, at least the first prison or even really the last, as we'll finish up with that, is that as jokingly as it sounds, this is why I really love this kind of violence because it's done just well enough the way it's filmed and everything that it's not like a quick shot. It's not something that is comic bookish or over the topish, where I think the Punisher sometimes almost did, not quite. So I agree with you. I think it's a lot like that, but since it's toned down and it's only in a few certain spots where it's very believable and there's a build up, it's just phenomenal. And even now watching it, the scene where he realizes and he's told by Udo Kier of all people,
I know,
that's awesome.
right?
Udo Kier about how they kidnapped his wife and they're gonna have an abortionist cut off their baby's limbs and send it to him if he doesn't go kill this person in this other prison. So he's in a minimum security and he has to go to this other one and he's like, "You must let them realize you need to go to a maximum security prison." And so he goes, and this one guy that's been pumping and pushing him a little bit, as Stallone would say, "Why are you pushing me?" And he just basically gets in a fight with this guy, and you can tell he can box a little bit, and they mention that he's spent some time in the ring, so you think he's killed somebody, is the way it alludes to it. But he's really more of a brawler when he gets to that second level. And crap, he basically gets this guy wrapped around, and when he rips his arm and breaks it, he does it invertedly, where the arm goes out more than 90 degrees, not towards his body, but away, and you see the bone sticking out just for a little bit. And I like how, of course, you hear like the celery crunching sound and the guy going whatever, and boom, that's it. There's no music. There's no people screaming, and the fact that there's not a lot of background stuff to distract you makes you focus on what's going on. And I just think scenes like that are just absolutely incredible. They're beautiful. So, what did you think of the violence, Doctor?
The violence, I was not expecting to see skulls and jaws popping out. I saw, like, I'm used to
Pulling the
the arms
teeth out of
breaking.
his forearm after
Mhm.
hitting the guy.
I mean, seriously, when you I'm used to seeing bone breaking. He broke the guy's arm or broke his leg and all you see stuff. But I was like, he's just curb stopping for fun. It's like crazy. It's like I can tell you, like, there's parts where the gores can be good, but like I got a thing with eyes, man. Putting thumbs in the eyes, oh, that's just kill me. Don't put thumbs in my eye. Just kill me first. It's like
One of the best things about the violence, and it does kind of go over the top, especially it's almost like a video game with the violence. Not that this movie watches like a video game, it's just as it goes, it elevates, but it does so because of his frustration. As you're watching him throughout the movie, the whole point with the car is we're supposed to see that he has an explosive temper. He
Yes.
just knows where to direct it. He loves his wife. The whole thing is about loyalty, not necessarily to the drug dealer, but he knows he's got to serve every day of that sentence just to make sure that nobody goes after his wife. His wife's vulnerable. Udo Kier, who, by the way, is one of the creepiest actors ever
Yes.
to grace the screen, could only give that whole thing where it's like we have an abortionist that could snip the arms and not even kill the baby. Only he could give that speech. And
It'd be
but
believable.
you could see at that point, I know, right?
And
At
that's the one
that
time Vince
point,
Vaughn seems terrified. Bradley, excuse me.
mhm. and at that point, he's ready to explode. He needs some outlet, and unfortunately, the people who are at the minimum wing, they've been treating him nice. So if you actually watch, the more people are treating him nice, even though it's harsh violence, it's less than the like Don Johnson comes in and is like, oh, I'm going to beat her, and he's like the tough guy. The more nice they were to him, the less violence he gets, because the more frustrated he gets, the more explosive temper. The violence is amazing in this as a character study of all things. It's so rare to get a movie that you get character through violence, and this you do.
You do unless it serves a purpose.
Yeah,
He was careful
violence,
about what he did.
violence with a purpose. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's literally I could see Vince Vaughn doing this and I just broke that guy's arm. I'm gonna go eat my sandwich over here.
Well, I'll say two things here about violence as we get into the third act, because, yeah, basically, he was successful when he made the decision to run drugs, but yes, of course, that's usually ends bad, like it does. And jokingly, in chat, Eric Breen saying, "Oh, you should watch happy, uplifting movies." I'm like, well, this is uplifting because you could tell that he's had a lifetime of instability, and he makes a commitment to it, and it actually pays off for him at the end. They don't cheese out on the ending. And to me, I will say this, you just to throw it off your comment and kind of go a little forward with this, is that I don't think it's an explosive temper. I think the fact is he caught his wife cheating on him, somebody he's been with a very long time. He's really pissed. To me, that's not explosive, not a temper. He's just taking it out. And anybody that doesn't, have some sort of outlet for their aggression or anger, I think it's ridiculous to ignore that side of you. And there's healthy ways to do it. And beating up a car is much better than beating up your wife or doing something in public. But when he channels this against the people that are getting in between him and his family life, obviously there's a price to pay, and you really get a sense of this when he makes it into the third act. And with Don Johnson, is the guy who runs it. I don't think he came across as a prick. I think Don Johnson, who's not a big guy, 5'9", 5'10", and he's like 65, 70 in this movie. He looks great. He's fantastic. But Don Johnson, like Udo Kier, is the type of person that is so convincing at being authoritative without, like, I'm the man, you believe how cool and steely he is. And the scene that really sets things off, and it picks up a lot faster in here, is when he's in the courtyard and he sees the gangbangers over there, and he's like, yeah, I'm Bradley and I'm crazy. And he walks over, and the one guy's like, you want to try something, man? And he's like, says something, and basically he's like, what, not red, white, and burrito. And then it's on. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, don't call me a foreigner last time I checked. Yeah, it's I read about him burrito.
Yeah, that calls back to, of course, the conversation when he first gets arrested. The reason why I say, and you may be right, it may be just be we're reading the same character in different ways. The reason why I thought he had an explosive temper is because he could have escaped. He could have just gone back. According to the police, there were two drug dealers, not three. He had every chance to just turn around, walk around the corner, maybe dive into the water, hide for as long as he needs to, whatever. The cop himself comes in and says, you could have gotten away scot-free, which kind of alludes to the fact that he didn't need to do what he did. But those two pissed him off because he knew right away when he first met the big guy that was going to go on this drug run with him that he shouldn't, because he was using. And I think it frustrated him. He had loyalty to his boss, but more so he has loyalty to his wife. The idea of hitting his wife, I don't think would ever cross his mind.
No.
That's why he attacks the car instead, because he's got that temper. He needs to hit something, and he will never take it out on his wife. He just loves her that much.
Dude, I read that he actually punched the window himself.
Yeah, damn.
That's why his hands are the whole entire movie real crap.
He's the real deal size-wise. He's a big boy.
And,
yeah, they even say it in the scene I'm just on is that he right now the scene I made it to, Udo Kier just gave him the order. So he's walking by and the two cops are guessing people's height. Like, what do you think? 6'1", 6'2", and then Vince Vaughn goes and they go 6'5". He's a big guy. He's a big dude.
There's one funny scene in this movie before we get to the last part. I just want to point this out, no homo, is that when they're sitting there and they make him strip and he's naked and he's got his hands on his head or whatever, you see the one guy, doing his measurements, and the one guy's standing over there and he looks down and he's looking at his crotch and he goes, A-, like respect,
yeah.
like he's not gay, but you're gonna see a lot of willies when you're in there. And if you're 6'5", you're probably packing some heat.
I want to comment on Burrid's comment. He's saying he's got a great Lex Luthor look, and I never thought about Vince Vaughn playing Lex Luthor.
This is also around the time he did a movie, not Heartbreak Ridge, something. Anyway, he played a sergeant, and he was nominated for an Oscar. And this was when these were his big pushes. And I think just by being Vince Vaughn, he didn't get them. But damn, this is an excellent role for him. It's one of those things where you're so used to seeing him in the
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're so used to seeing him in the comedy roles that when they do something like this, it's almost shocking. But it's like, well, it's always been there, and you could see it in certain, in other things.
I've always said he's a versatile actor. He can play serious, he can play comedy. He's great at both.
Yeah,
not many are.
True.
Yeah, but done. Good time.
I will say this, I'll start with my closing thoughts, and then Doctor, I'll pass over to you before we go to E. Basically, the end of the movie, he ends up finding the guy he's supposed to whack. He's successful in it, and yes, it's very brutal. Seems realistic and all that too, and things work out for him there at the end. I don't want to say too much so you have the joy of watching it if you haven't. But for me, the good thing about this movie is, like I said, the violence. I don't call it a temper because that makes it seem like you can't control it, and I think he demonstrates a great deal of control. So I think you're watching somebody that has, and they say it in the movie, like some sort of moral center. It may not be 100% by society's norms or whatever, but at least you understand it. And I think you had a great point when you said you get to see what it is about it. You don't have to hear about it. But really, another touching thing about this movie is the music's fantastic, and it's placed well. There's not a lot of it, and I don't necessarily mean the score, but just the stuff that they use. I think it's a surprisingly good movie. Like, watching, I'm like, yeah, I know what happens and what goes on. There's not much with it, but as I was rewatching it earlier today, I was like, man, I was trying to fast forward and go, wait a minute, and I was like, no, let me just stop and watch this, and I'm realizing, man, I'm watching it all over again because it's very watchable, it's very good. And E, you might have came in at the a few minutes in, but I started off talking about how this director did a movie, his first movie we both liked, which we will be reviewing at some point, called Bone Tomahawk with Kurt Russell. And it was very similar to me in that with the violence and stuff. So, Doctor, you hadn't seen it before, you saw it, it seemed like it was a little bit of a surprise to you and all that. What'd you think of it overall? I mean, your final thoughts on this movie?
Overall, it was a solid movie. I give it a 9 out of 10, man. Only because he didn't shove anybody's face in the poop. I was waiting for that, man. Waiting for him to wait like the guard was like, no, I can't eat his poop in here. I'm waiting for him to shove the guard's face in the fucking toilet, and that'd be awesome.
Well, I got to tell you, you could say that guy should have been listening to Kicking It.
I mean, poor Wilson. He should have just thrown it away.
All right, E, what about you? Give us your final thoughts and then lead into what's going on at 8 o'clock tonight.
Alrighty. First, you have seen this movie before we talked about it today, then?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
thought this was like home. Okay, cool. This is an A+ film in my opinion. One of the central rules of movies is show don't tell, and that's what this is. Like I said, it's very rare that you get character in violence. A lot of times they'll give you the character, but then they'll stop it in order to tell, show the action, show the violence, show the chase scene or whatever. But this is all the way to the end. All the way to the end. It's on Vince Vaughn's face. It's in the way he acts, the way he reacts to the world around him. You continue to learn about this character all the way to the ending, which of course, we're not going to spoil anything, as far as just to say that an hour and 10 minutes is when it really starts kicking in as far as the violence. But if you ignore that previous hour and 10 minutes, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you need every little single bit of it to truly understand the emotional impact of what you're about to see. And what you're about to see is amazing. This director, in none of the films, I've seen 3 of them that I know of. I would have to look at the IMDb, but after this, he does a movie called Dragged Across the Concrete with Mel Gibson, which I think also, if you haven't seen, Rob, you'll enjoy.
That's also the same, actor, director, same director, right?
Yeah, by the same director. Yeah. It's an intense movie. It's just, and it's kind of weird to say this about a movie like this, but I'll say this about this. I'll say it about Bone Tomahawk. It's a joy to watch, because in the end, it's just fabulous filmmaking. And that it's what you hope to see. If you go see a horror film, if you go see a drama, whatever genre you are, whether it's supposed to be a film that makes you feel good or makes you think or whatever, all you want to see is that particular genre done perfectly. And I do believe this is one of the few near perfect films. Seriously.
I have to say, everyone's used to, E being the Pollyanna and liking everything. Yeah, well, he was a baby killer and he did blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but he wasn't that bad of a guy. He was pretty good for most of it. He's legit about this too, because the one thing I'll say is that for this movie, like Bone Tomahawk, it's kind of like when you get something kind of like new, or like, you go out a couple times with that new special someone, and things are kind of okay or whatever like that, and it doesn't last very long for whatever reason, and you realize, wow, that was a pretty cool person, or we had some really good times. You find yourself emotionally attached or missing it when it's gone. And the thing with this movie is, I'm watching it going, why do I want to watch it? I don't care. But then the point is with the film, you don't realize that you're emotionally getting invested into it until the violence breaks out, and then it's like a release, and then you're like, dude, that's really, really good. And that's the same thing with Bone Tomahawk. You're watching stuff happen, and then there's some scenes, and you're like, oh my God, and you realized, oh my God, I was invested into it, and I didn't know it consciously, but, I was there all along. And part of that is when you don't have to friggin' think about storylines and 50 million dumb things, where you can just watch it and let your emotions take over. And that's one thing I think this director's got a knack on. So I definitely would be looking forward to that third film of his. What were you going to say, Doctor?
I was just saying, I too mostly got unexpected. I did not find myself, really emotionally invested in this movie and his character. And then John Johnson, I want to kill him.
Yeah, once again, I don't want to. I'll say this much, because I really don't want to spoil anything of the movie, especially towards the ending, just to say that Don Johnson, I completely agree. He's one of the few people. I actually think my father was like this when he was younger. Just by being in the room, he commands it. I think Don Johnson can be one of those actors. He can do that kind of character.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I get crapped on for loving Miami Vice, not a guilty pleasure
But
with Don
I
Johnson,
will
and
say
I don't
this.
care. But he's got that in his old
Mhm.
age in all those roles. He's really phenomenal
Yeah.
at it.
I will
Yeah.
say this though. I thought this was gonna turn like an underground boxing movie, like from In Hell.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because he's talking about I'm a coach of a boxing
I was like,
program
man, we're
here.
getting the Jean-Claude Van Damme part 2.
It'll be Lionheart.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I would have loved to see Vince Vaughn in a movie like that too.
I know after this one, yeah, maybe as a little brain cleanser. Now, here's something to go back on what you said about me as far as being the Pollyanna. One thing we always do is we say you got to back it up. And that's something I can do, and especially for this movie.
And you
If
did.
you haven't
That's the
seen
point
it,
I was making. Yeah, it's a great film.
if you haven't seen it, you should see it.
So tell everybody what's going to be going on in about 20, 30 minutes or so. 8 o'clock tonight Eastern.
It is actually Top 10 Tuesday, and we're going to be doing our Top 10 list on a Tuesday. So
Yes.
we're going to be talking about the best films, or at least our favorite films of 2002, which I'm looking forward to. I might have to rearrange my list, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's a good year.
Honestly, in my list, I got 12.
Okay,
I had to cut myself off because I could have kept going.
yeah, that's one of the things. It was very easy for me to pick more than 20, but it was hard for me to whittle them down and then order them.
Yes, ordering yes.
Because you got to go, okay, well, which one is better? But you start noticing those good movies falling off the top 10. You're like, oh man, no. But yeah, it's a good year. So come back and join us around 8 o'clock as well. So
yeah, check that link out. And yes, and Ed said he'll check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. It is there currently, so it's there. Obviously, it's free. Yeah, it's one of those movies. It's a little over 2 hours long, so it's not a 90-minute one. It's deliberate. It's you're in the right mood and you watch it. You're like, yeah, that's pretty good. When you want something, if you don't want something stupid, you want something a little moody, maybe. Solid. I like it a lot. I think we all do that. Definitely passes the Meg test for sure. So for the doctor, for E, for myself, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up. See you guys in about 20, and as always, stay extreme.
stay extreme.
Toodles.